It was almost as if the knocks were in sync. I froze. In the far corner of the basement, I saw a shadowy figure hunched over, facing the wall. My name is Jason, and I've always been a tech-savvy guy with an interest in video games. At 27 years old, I had my fair share of late-night gaming sessions, predominantly the older Call of Duty games, Rust and Fortnite. I know, very original. But it's my way of winding down after a day at work or simply blowing off steam. My room is filled with posters, action figures, and a collection of Star Wars Lego sets I've accumulated over the years. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a nerd, and I wear that badge with pride. As someone who loved gaming and science fiction, I was not easily spooked, but a few weeks ago, that had all changed. On this particular evening, I was winding down for the night after having played a few rounds of some Call of Duty Zombies with a friend of mine. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and I felt myself getting quite drowsy, so I told my friend goodnight and slumped down in my bed. At 3:27, I awoke, halfway between the realm of dreams and reality. My digital clock on my nightstand was the only source of light in my room. I remember being pleased that it wasn't time for me to get up yet. Then out of nowhere, this feeling of disparity overwhelmed me. I didn't wake up for the sake of it. Something had woken me. It was quiet. I could hear the subtle hum of my alarm clock and my soft breathing. Looking up at the ceiling, I decided that I could use a few more hours of sleep and turned over to face the wall. That was then that I heard it, a faint shuffling of cardboard coming from the corner of my room. My heart began to race as I tried to make sense of it. Those sounds were unmistakable. They were the empty Star Wars Lego boxes I kept stacked in the corner of my bedroom. But why were they moving? Panic started to claw at my throat as I ruled out any logical explanations. There were no windows in that corner, and I distinctly remembered closing all the windows before playing any games that night. The gnawing fear intensified as I strained to listen for any more sounds. It was no coincidence. The sound was real, and it was the shifting of cardboard against the carpet. My body tensed as I slowly turned, facing the corner furthest from me. My gaze was met with a sight that defied reason and logic. There, nestled amidst the boxes, was a figure. A man. A total stranger. Dressed in ragged clothing, he crouched among the boxes. His hair was greasy, and his eyes locked onto mine with intensity. I couldn't move. Fear held me paralyzed as our eyes locked. The man didn't belong in my room, and I had no idea how he got there. The situation became a swirling vortex of panic, disbelief, and raw terror. In that moment, my survival instincts kicked in, and I threw my alarm clock on my nightstand across the room, shattering the silence and distracting the intruder. Seizing the opportunity, I lunged for the bedroom door and dashed down the hallway, dialing 911 on my phone as I fled. Within 10 minutes, the police arrived and apprehended the intruder. It turned out that he had entered through an unlocked window in the living room while I was happily gaming away. He had made his way through the house, unaware that I was home. The encounter was absolutely terrifying, and it left me with a lingering sense of vulnerability and paranoia. Despite the presence of law enforcement and the knowledge that the intruder was now detained, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that my room was no longer safe. The incident served as a reminder that even in the comfort of your own home, danger could lurk in the shadows, waiting to shatter the peace. I had always been a bit of a night owl, so when my family decided to visit my grandparents out of town, I was assigned to stay home alone for a few days and to look after the house. The idea of having the whole house to myself sounded fantastic, especially at an age where all I was going to do anyway was play video games with my friends and have little to no bedtime. My name is Alex, a 19-year-old college student with a fascination for horror movies and a knack for staying up late. My hobbies include playing guitar, video games, and exploring the world of the supernatural. which often keeps me awake long into the night. On this night, the house was cozy. My dinner had just arrived, and the excitement of caring for myself seemed appealing. So you're familiar with the sort of house I live in. Would be best described as a typical 2-story suburban home, the kind that looks identical to one another. Don't get me wrong, I was familiar with my house. I had lived in it for years, but I had never been alone for such an extended period. I suppose it was due to me being an only child or something. For the first night, I had lined up a series of my favorite horror films to watch on our big screen TV. Nothing was out of the ordinary. There were the slight creaks and distant hums from the refrigerator and passing cars, but other than that, it was peacefully silent. As I settled into bed, I heard a faint sound coming from the floor below my room. It was like a muffled knock. That's strange, I thought. But I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, or perhaps just the sounds houses make. I reasoned that such noises were typical in an old house, especially since I was alone and didn't want to freak myself out. However, the faint knocks continued, growing more distinct with each repetition. What started as gentle taps on the walls had transformed into a clear, rhythmic knocking. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was responsible. My heart raced, and that dreaded sinking of my stomach overwhelmed me. I decided to be a man and find the source of the noise. Arming myself with a baseball bat I found in my parents' bedroom. As part of my usual routine of going to bed, I would turn off the lights around the house, as per my father's constant instruction to do so. I turned into the hallway. The house was now shrouded in darkness, and my sense of solitude had turned into a daunting chill. The knocks persisted, echoing through the hallways. As I approached the staircase, I could clearly hear the knocking coming from the basement. Now I was at the basement door, wrapped my hand around the door handle, and pushed the door open with the bat. This is exactly out of a horror movie, I remember thinking. With each step, I took down my creaky basement stairs. It was almost as if the knocks were in sync. I froze. In the far corner of the basement, I saw a shadowy figure hunched over, facing the wall. The rhythmic knocking was most definitely coming from its fingers as they tapped against the washing machine. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I gasped and stammered, "Who's there?" The figure slowly turned, revealing a pale, gaunt face and hollow eyes. The stranger's lips curled into a smile, revealing a row of yellow, decaying teeth, while tilting their head slightly to my left. I bolted up those stairs as fast as I could, swung the basement door closed, and locked it. I sprinted to my neighbor's house, where I called the police from my phone. They arrived pretty fast, I remember thinking, as I waited on my neighbor's porch for them to conduct a thorough search of my home. It turned out that the intruder had been living in a concealed crawlspace in the basement, hidden from sight. The small, hidden space allowed them to move freely through the house. The police arrested the intruder, and from that day on, I could never be home alone without a fear of knocks in the night. My once place of sleep and safety had become a place of dread, and I knew I will never forget that haunting encounter. I am a 30-year-old female who works as an English teacher throughout the year, and is someone who loves the peaceful serenity of a good book. As an introvert, I value my alone time and find fulfillment in the familiar comfort of my home. Growing up, I'd always been the bookworm, spending countless hours lost in fantastic worlds created by words on a page. When school holidays come around, I like to go to my tiny house nestled deep in the woods, which is somewhat of my private haven. Now, this happened to me at the beginning of this year. It was a cool fall evening where the sun had dipped below the horizon, which created shadows across the woods that cradled my home. This was exactly how I liked it. The first leaves of the season had begun to litter the ground, providing a satisfying crunch underfoot. My tiny home is a charming structure with a rustic, inviting aura about it. is nestled in a remote part of the forest, about an hour's drive from my boyfriend's house. It had been my getaway for years, a perfect match for my love of solitude. The home was warmed by a wood-burning stove and dotted with warm, dimly lit lamps, creating a somewhat cozy atmosphere that inspired me. This night, I settled into my favorite reading nook by the fireplace. There was noise that pierced the silence. It was a distant whisper, a soft rustling beyond the window. I glimpsed up to the window and saw nothing. I brushed it off as the wind or an animal passing through, which of course, being the forest, wasn't uncommon. But then it happened again, louder this time, a deliberate crunching of leaves just outside my window. This time it caught me off guard. Something didn't feel right. I peered to the window this time into the darkness beyond the glass. There, I saw it. A shadowy figure move across the window. My heart quickened as my mind raced to make sense of the situation. That wasn't an animal. I was sure of it. I was sure I had locked all the doors and windows. As I was rationalizing the situation, the figure moved closer to the window, their features obscured by a hood or something. I contemplated my options, and it felt as though the night drew on and on. Should I call the authorities? Attempt to flee into the woods? Stay and confront this unknown person? Did they have a weapon and want to harm me? Fear rendered me immobile, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the window. Then it happened. The figure, with a sudden burst of energy, busted the window with a heavy object, shattering the glass and sending shards into the room. The intruder began to climb through, a tall, menacing silhouette in full black clothing, a mask covering his face. With a rush of adrenaline, I sprang from my chair, grabbing the nearby fireplace poker as a weapon. The intruder's intentions remained a mystery, but I wasn't going to ask questions and allow my home to be violated without a fight. With a shaky, determined breath, I lunged and swung at the intruder. After a tense standoff, the intruder made an abrupt retreat, vanishing into the night as suddenly as he had appeared. I quickly dialed 911, and the police arrived soon after, conducting a thorough search of the surrounding area. The intruder was never found, leaving behind an unsettling mystery. He must have thought that no one was home, which I found peculiar since I had my fireplace blasting, which should have been visible from that window. Though I continued to find solace in my woodland cottage, the sense of security I had once cherished was forever altered. The memory of that night remained etched in my mind, a haunting reminder that even in the most tranquil of settings, the unknown could emerge from the shadows, turning a haven into a heart-pounding nightmare.